When it comes to the world of Spy Family, the relationship between Loid and Yor Forger has been in an eternal will they or won't they fall in love situation for the fans of the series who fell in love with season 1 of the anime. One is a spy who arranged for this sham marriage out of the need to maintain his cover, and the other is an assassin who needed to stay in hiding and not draw suspicion to herself by being a single woman who should have long since been married. However, their marriage is one that was built on a foundation of a lie, a mutual understanding that the marriage was merely for appearances, and yet that hasn't stopped many fans from looking for signs that the two will end up falling in love. And in today's Spy Family video, I want to share with you guys the one moment in the series where it became undoubtedly clear that Yor Forger was beginning to fall in love with Loid Forger. In my opinion, one of our strongest signs that Yor is beginning to fall in love with Loid comes in chapter 24 of the manga, where we see Yor worrying herself crazy at the prospect of failing to learn how to cook for Loid. After taking the time to meet with her co-workers and ask them to help her learn how to cook by teaching her how to cook, Yor spends her nights after work going to Camilla's house to take lessons in cooking. We see her so enthusiastic about her efforts to learn how to cook that she's begun to cut her own fingers to a point where she's playing blood all over the potatoes. She's chopped the chopping board into pieces with each cut. While it's easy to say this was merely for comedy, which that is definitely something that the mangaka was going for, I want to bring your attention to Yor's extremely jealous younger brother Yuri. As we all know, Yuri has a bit of a sister fetish, and when he learns that Yor is doing all this with Loid in order to impress him and become a better wife for him, it irritates him. Yor didn't need to do anything to secure herself in her marriage with Loid. They had a mutual understanding, and by this point in the story, she had no reason to believe that Loid will replace her with Fiona because she hadn't met Fiona yet, so Yor had no reason to feel threatened. This is Yor wanting to be better at cooking so she can do something to add value to Loid's life, which is going to be the key here. One of the key things to being in a relationship is to find ways to continue to add value to the life of your significant other, and for Yor, her wanting to cook to take off some of the weight of Loid's shoulders and to do something for him by cooking is a huge sign. He never asked her to do this, but she did so willingly. In fact, it led to her cooking the very stew that her own mother used to make for her and Yuri when they were children. Wanting to make something that was a cherished memory for her as a child, for her own husband and daughter, is a sign that subconsciously Yor's attachment has grown strong, and it's an act of kindness rooted in love due to the very origins of the stew itself, and the idea of getting to see them smile while eating something that she cooked brought her so much joy that it brought tears to her eyes. Now, if we look at the old saying that has existed for hundreds of years, it says that the fastest way to a man's heart is through his stomach, which is rooted in the belief that if you love someone, you can make a good home-cooked meal for them, and the love that you put into the preparation of the food used to make that meal will be ingested by them, and once they eat the food, they will love you forever. For Yor, the meal that she made came from the suggestion about a meal that her mother used to make for her, and she put her all into making it for Loid in order to eat. There have been studies that show that when a woman is in love, they are 40% more likely to either cook for the significant other or to be inspired to learn how to cook for them, which was definitely the case for Yor, even if it was subconscious, which we also see this is the case given how she felt so threatened by Fiona's presence in the later chapters that came out, with the subconscious truth being that she'd already gotten herself invested in Loid via this act of cooking. So if we go ahead and jump to chapter 34 of Spy Family's manga, after Yor has won her tennis match against Agent Nightfall, who Yor believes to be Loid's co-worker Fiona, we see Yor very deep in thought, and she's sitting on her couch with a depressed look on her face. Normally when we see Yor, she's got a super upbeat look on her face, and she's very quirky by nature, and you see it on full display, but here we see Yor who's in extremely deep thought, and the source of her discomfort comes from her belief that Loid is about to replace her. Now, while it's easy to say that Yor was merely worried about Loid leaving her due to the appearances that came from it and her worrying about her younger brother Yuri, I don't believe this is the case. I'm going to explain to you why. So in the very next chapter, we see Yor continuing to look depressed to a point where her own neighbors have seen her and realized that something's wrong with Yor, and for Yor, she can't stop thinking about winning the tennis match against Agent Nightfall and thinking it might not have been enough to make Loid stay with her. When Yor is shown at the bar with Loid, we see Yor unable to speak the words that she will let Loid go to be with Fiona if that's what his heart desires, and it's because subconsciously she doesn't want to leave from Loid's life. The fact that she's already made the distinction between what a real and a fake marriage is prior to this in her internal monologue, and her refusal to say the words openly is huge because it's a further sign that Yor has begun to care for Loid on a deeper level, to a point where the idea of him being with another woman who can make him happy, a woman who isn't her, makes her troubled enough that she begins to start drinking in order to gain the strength to say the words that she needs to say in order to let him go. Drinking can be a way for people to deal with their emotions that they aren't ready to address yet, and a way to give them the courage to either run to face their fears or provide them with an excuse to run away from those very same fears. For Yor, it was the former. She needed the booze in order to give herself the strength to confront the possibility that Loid would leave her. Yor then goes on to say that she isn't pretty like Fiona, and she recalls there used to be a time when Loid used to think that she was pretty, which she's now begun to doubt was ever true. This in turn shows that she values Loid's opinion of her enough that she wishes to gain validation from him, and she wants to appear attractive in his eyes. This is huge because what attracts men and women oftentimes is not the same thing. Attraction isn't necessarily equal, and that's something that science backs up. When a man sees a woman who he's attracted to, the activation inside of his brain is a bit more prominent in men than it is when women are presenting the same situation. When you look at the chemicals that are being released, which leads to the mediating of a more visual stimuli in the man. Yor might have been drunk, but she understood that a woman who might have been more attractive stood a chance at taking her husband from her. And what this also shows is that Yor's gotten extremely invested in Loid by both not wanting to leave his life, but also not being the apple of his eye. It's why later on in the story, Yor, despite being a life or death battle on the cruise ship, is thinking constantly about making her way back to Loid. And she's been shown trusting enough in Loid to fall asleep in his arms and going out of her way to make friends with mothers at her daughter's school, all to add a further value to the lives of Loid and his daughter. The things someone does for the people they love, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, it still reflects the deepest corners of their soul. And for someone like Yor, who spent so much of her life with her soul covered in the crimson color of the blood from those that she spilled it from, her soul was beginning to be dyed in red again, a deeper shade of red, a color that this time comes not from the blood that she spilled, but from the bonds that she's formed with others like Loid and Anya, the two who she's begun to view like a family. However, that's why I turn it over to you guys. Are you guys convinced that Yor and Loid are going to end up together in a legitimate marriage at the end of the series? Let me know down in the comment section below, and while you think about that, consider watching these other Spy Family videos you see on the screen right now.